Hi, this chapter's called A Pumpkin the Size of a Car Shed. I told you, didn't I, about the big pumpkin? The one you couldn't get into the wheelbarrow? This one was bigger again, Grandad said, sitting down in his wheelbarrow and pointing. About the size of that car shed. The car shed? How did it get to grow so big? I fed it on my compost. They took photos and put them in all the newspapers. What did Granny think? Oh, she kept telling me to get rid of it, but what could I do? It was growing and squashing old Crimson Glory, her favourite rose. And I had to shift the clothesline because she complained that the pumpkin was keeping the sun off her washing. It was the 1930s depression. People were hungry and had no jobs, and my mate, old Humdrum, suggested giving away bits of pumpkin to anyone who wanted it. So we cut a door with a cross-cut saw and dug out the inside with an axe and shovel. And we gave away lorry loads and sent railway wagons loaded with great chunks of yellow pumpkin to Wellington and Christchurch and Dunedin. Did that stop it growing, Grandad? It caved in like a basketball and gone flat. That's gone flat. We should have pumped it up, said my mate, old Humdrum. See what happens. I closed the door to the side of the giant flat pumpkin, and old Humdrum used the pump off his bike, but the connection got hot, so we had to pinch the pump off your grandmother's bike and use the connection off that. We pumped for 3 days solid before the giant pumpkin stirred and shook itself, almost like it was coming alive. It's lifting, old Humdrum yelled. We pumped away and the pumpkin rose off the ground. I got our fishing net and threw it over the top and tied it to one of your grandmother's clotheslines. We didn't want it just floating away. What happened? Old Humdrum slung your grandmother's clothes basket under the giant pumpkin like the one under a hot air balloon, and he climbed aboard and hung on to the end of the clothesline as the pumpkin tugged and tried to rise up into the air. Yes, your grandmother came to take her washing in, and I saw old Humdrum in her clothes basket under the giant pumpkin, the clothesline stretched straight up into the air, and all her washing flying behind it like flags. What did she say? Well, I couldn't hear for old Humdrum's screams. Why was he screaming? He was a bit scared of your grandmother, and she was shaking her fist at him. He yanked the clothesline, and the bottom end came free, and the giant pumpkin leapt into the sky and blew away over the top of Rangitoto. What about Mr. Humdrum? The last I ever saw of him. He was jumping up and down, screaming, and the whole shebang, the pumpkin and the fishnet and the clothes basket and the clothesline and the washing, drifting off towards the Coromandel Peninsula. The next day, Teddy Brownlung in his fishing boat off Mersey Bay said he heard a yell and looked up and saw it heading towards South America. That'd be about right, said Grandad. It was blowing a westerly that day. Did you ever see it again? People write to the Herald now and then and say they've seen something sailing overhead with a string of flags flying behind it, and I reckon it's our giant pumpkin drifting around the world with your grandmother's washing and old Humdrum. Will he be all right? Well, he's got all the pumpkin he can eat. What if he gets sick of that? Well, he hasn't got much choice. Anyway, he didn't have to go climbing into the clothes basket, did he? I suppose not. Old Humdrum can look after himself. He'll turn up again some day full of yarns about the giant pumpkin coming down to Africa or Alaska. What if it comes down over the sea? Well, he'll just have to swim for home, won't he? He is quite a good dog paddler. What if the giant pumpkin floats up towards the sun? Then we'll smell cooked pumpkin. And what about Mr. Humdrum? Well, he could always drill a hole in the pumpkin with his pocket knife and let a bit of air out and come down. He'll soon let us know if he's not enjoying himself. He's got a fairly loud yell, old Humdrum. Not as loud as your grandmother's, but pretty close. Whenever there's a full moon, I look up to see if the giant pumpkin's drifting across the sky. It'd show up against the moon, you know, something that big. I suppose it would, I said to Grandad.